Massachusetts Foreign Language Association. Mike Weber is going to talk to us about Foxborough cable access. We have acceptance of a gift in Vensis. We will discuss then the 2008-2009 school calendar, followed by a preschool update by Dr. Martis. After that, Dr. Martis will brief the community on the Taylor School principal search process. Mr. Jackson will discuss the monthly budget. We will then have a discussion potentially of the fiscal 09 budget, a second reading of the policy manual, other matters on the part of the committee, and then we will go into executive session for the discussion of collective bargaining strategies. We will not be coming out into open session at the end of that. So with that, I will open it up to visitors. Do we have any visitors who would like to make comments this evening? Sir, please come forward and state your name.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Andres Navedo, 94 Spruce. I have a letter that I've written, and if it's okay, I would just like to read it.
Do you have a copy for all of us, or?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you.
This is a signed copy,
Thank you, sir.
and there's
Thank you.
I think that may be...
We could share. Some of the others if you need.
That's okay.
Oh, there's extras here.
Here,
I
right?
made sure there were one for everybody.
Thank you.
All right, sir, let's go ahead and go.
And this is addressed to Mr. Harrington. Your letter of March 7, 2008 seems an attempt to have it both ways. On the one hand, you stated that you did not intend to respond to the issues that we raised, while on the other hand, you suggested that we should move on. You are correct. My letter of March 5 had several points, I should say. I tried to show you the difference between what we wrote and what you falsely accused us of saying. Maybe there was too much information for one sitting. However, while you chose to ignore the issues, the validity of our points remained. Perhaps you preferred to make the task more manageable for yourself by answering our points separately. The main point of my letter was to make you aware of the importance of accuracy and the ill effects of your comments. Firstly, the damage done by trivializing errors, like the virus versus bacterium discussion, and secondly, the misrepresentation you created of our November 18 email and the offensive results of your false accusation. On November 18, we wrote, and I quote the text there, where I highlighted that the nurses may have an opportunity to alert the superintendent of the mistake. On December 18, you said that, virus instead of bacterium, all right. Now, I put it there. I don't know the difference, but to me, what was important is the topic, was important for the community to discuss. There was criticism that two nursing professionals didn't know it was an issue and corrected before the agenda went out. You don't see the agenda before it goes out, so I continue to quote, I should say. So again, it's that mean-spiritedness that instead of being excited that we're putting an important topic on the agenda and correcting us if we use the wrong word, but to put it out the night before to criticize two professionals of the committee as nursing professionals or as medical professionals, and that they should have seen it, that they should have known, they should have given advice, it's just not fair. And I omit the rest of the quote. I have shown that our statements and your representations about the statements do not match, and your statements distorted the truth, were inflammatory, and were injurious to us. Were these more of what you have called misspeaks? If they were, why have you delayed accepting them as such? Perhaps the statements were not misspeaks, but were consistent with your goals and did not require your correction. I cannot accept your claims of treating us with respect when you created harmful misinformation that you have not corrected. Additionally, I have treated you with respect, and you chose to insult my wife and me with expletives on December 18. Is your conduct of December 18 consistent with a, quote, positive and respectful manner? Rather, your actions and your actions are more consistent with disturbing the peace. I hope that you deem it prudent to show us your civility and desire to work with goodwill by explaining to us the reasons for defaming us with untruth. To this day, you have chosen to ignore these issues. Allow me to quote from our departing principal, Ms. Kay Naylor, and I should say that she said this here in February 9, 2004, quote, "Don't say you are a team player and then spend your time creating conflict and harmful misinformation." Respectfully, and I signed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. For those at home, I did receive a similar letter. I responded to that letter, and I said that I didn't intend to argue point by point the accusations that were made in the negative comments, and I don't intend to do that this evening either. So thank you very much. Are there any other visitors that would like to make any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first set is the January 28th minutes that had some revisions that were made to it. Are there any other revisions to those minutes, or do I have a motion to approve?
I would make that motion.
Motion to approve by Kate, second by Martha. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The next set of minutes are February 25th, 2008. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion to approve by Katie, a second by Martha. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion for one abstention. Okay. Okay. Next item is recognition. Dr. Martis, would you like to take us through this section, please?
I sure would. Thank you. We have two terrific recognitions tonight. The first one is the Boston Globe Scholastic Art Awards, an announcement that we made recently and that we're very, very proud of, and I think in what I hope will be a sustaining tradition here in Foxborough. When we hear good news, we celebrate it, and we really want to do that tonight. So what I'd like to do is, and I'm sure knowing high school students, I think as well as I do, I'm sure you'd just like to stand there and wave, but I'd love to have you come up when I call your name so that we can recognize you and so that the camera can see you and the people at home who are viewing will get a chance to see you, because we are really thrilled with this. I'm just reading a letter from Jerry Roy, our chair of our art department, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. He wrote a note to our principal and said, "Dear Jeff, the art department of the Foxborough Public Schools is proud to announce that 6 Foxborough High School students received 7 individual awards, and 1 student captured a portfolio award at this year's Scholastic Art Awards contest sponsored statewide by the Boston Globe. The art department would like to recognize and congratulate Carolyn Augusta." Carolyn, would you come up, please? And Carolyn submitted a stone carving and won the Gold Key Award. Christopher Crocker.
They all should keep standing.
Yeah,
Right.
Carolyn,
We want
that.
that.
Come on,
Safety
you can
in
stay.
numbers.
Stay upstairs. Like that.
Perfect. Congratulations.
Chris won in computer graphics another Gold Key Award. Danielle Gentile. Gentile. Thank you. Danielle couldn't make it tonight, but she won a Silver Key and Honorable Mention Award for print and functional pottery. So let's give her a hand in case she's watching. Next one, Taylor Martinelli. Is Taylor here? Taylor Martinelli won a Silver Key Award for stone carving. Congratulations. Mary Greeley. Mary Greeley won an honorable mention award in computer graphics. Congratulations. And Ryan Walter. Ryan is not here. He won an honorable mention award for computer graphics. We are also pleased, extremely pleased to announce that Matthew Pillsbury, who I believe is here, Matthew, picture in the Foxborough Reporter, and now this, terrific, who won a prestigious Gold Key Portfolio Award for his photography portfolio. And again, congratulations. These are really terrific awards. This is a statewide event. I've been following this for a number of years in a number of communities, and in a school this size, it's really unusual to have this number of students being awarded this state award. So really, congratulations. We're very, very proud of you.
Congratulations. Good job.
Congratulations. 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 Great job. And we'd also, Chris, like to at least acknowledge their parents as well. Not all of them were here tonight, but it's certainly an honor for their parents who have worked so hard to help motivate them to where they are today, and so we want to thank their parents too.
Okay, and our second award, or recognition tonight, we've titled the Best of Massachusetts Foreign Language Association. And I received an email recently from two teachers at the Ahern Middle School who have been honored by the Executive Committee of the Massachusetts Foreign Language Association. So I would like to invite Lisa Blumen and Deborah Noblin, Donna Noblin, to come up with Sue Abrams, principal of the Ahern Middle School, to tell us about, and I know you've given all of us some information, but to tell us about what you're going to be doing to spread the word across, actually, I think at a national conference, about what we're doing here in Foxborough. So if you'd come up.
Just as a little introduction, I'd like to say that I encountered a group of 7th graders a short time ago in the group space putting on a skit. And their pronunciation was so superb that they would have been mistaken for native Spanish speakers. And I think it's directly as a result of an innovation that Donna Noblin has started called Boletos por Hablar, which she has not only shared with the students at the Ahern Middle School, but now she has shared nationally with Lisa Blumen. So we're very proud of our innovative education, and here's a little bit about it.
First of all, we presented in October on this system that we use in our classrooms at the Massachusetts Foreign Language Association annual conference. And as a result of that presentation, we were voted Best of Massachusetts, best workshop at the conference. And we were asked to present in New York City later this week for the Northeast Conference on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. And there'll be about 6 to 8 other states there presenting their best of workshops as well. And Donna will tell you a little bit about what we're presenting on.
Boletos por hablar, tickets for speaking, and here are our famous tickets. And every term, the color changes so that we don't find any strays around. And this is a system that was started to encourage students to use the target language, not just to be reading it and writing it, but to actually speak in the target language. So during class, they are encouraged to ask their questions about the lesson or about anything that's going on in Spanish. And also, we ask them to tell us what's going on in their lives. So each day we speak to different numbers of students. Some days it could be, 10 students in a class. We speak with them, and they tell us things that they did over the weekend. They tell us what's going on, and they get tickets. And sometimes they get 2 tickets if we engage in a conversation. And this system really works so well in the 7th grade. And so for the past few years, Lisa has also adopted it, and we've worked it out together. We tweak it together. And my students go to her, the 7th graders go to the 8th grade, and they continue doing this. And it just results in excellent fluency. They gain confidence in using the language. They learn through learning with verbs. Every sentence needs a verb, so they learn a lot of verb conjugations, and so they can express themselves very well. We're excited about it. Some days we wear the boletos around our neck, we wear them as earrings. Just some days we do that, and just if we feel like there's been a lull and they're not speaking as much, we'll do things like that.
And one motivating factor is we set a number of tickets that the students need to earn each term, and it increases as the terms go on throughout the year. And this number, if they reach their required number, it's a large portion of their grade. So, maybe 25 to 30% of their grade is based on how much speaking they're doing in the classroom. So the system's really designed to quantify the amount of Spanish that students are speaking in the classroom. And it's just amazing how they're able to just express whatever they want to say. They're able to express themselves in the target language.
And often they'll say, "Oh, I'm not sure how to say this." So we'll say, "All right, tell me in English, and I'll prove to you that you do know how to say that in Spanish." And so that happens once in a while. As Lisa said, it's part of their grade, and the part of the grade is called oral expression, because that's precisely what we're asking them to do, is express themselves orally in the language. And because it's part of their grade, boy, they line up. They line up and wait to tell us things. So we're very excited. At the conference, we will show video clips of our students speaking in the classroom. So that was a very exciting part of the workshop back in October when we did the original workshop, for our colleagues to see students actually speaking during the class and just spontaneously speaking. So and we thank you for inviting us here.
Thank you very much.
Felicitaciones.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is Foxborough Cable Access. Mike Weber.
I think we have to speak. Yep.
And Mike, would you introduce your worthy assistant today?
This is Paul Beck, my boss, the president of Foxborough Cable Access, recently elected in January. And we should have a picture here. Here it comes.
It will get brighter very quickly.
Well, thank you for letting us come in and speak. We're here tonight to talk about a project that's been going on actually for the last 4 years. And what you see up there is a picture of essentially the finished product. It's a control room and camera setup that has been permanently installed in the high school auditorium. It's actually a very unique project, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about how we got to this point before I turn it over to Paul to talk a little bit about the technical side and what some of the uses we anticipate with this facility. Everything you see in the picture there was donated. Almost everything in that picture you see was donated and was essentially no cost to Foxborough Cable Access. And I think that's important to mention, especially as we're looking for a new location. This is not the type of project that would be able to to do any other way. The equipment, when it was new, I did some quick calculations today, and Mike Everson was helping me. At its new state, it would have been over $1 million worth of equipment in this picture and the cameras that are inside the auditorium. At today's value, you're probably talking pennies on the dollar in terms of its value. But for us and for the community, it's still working and it's still usable and still functioning for our purposes. And so we took on the project. Again, the project started in 2004. I just need to tell you a little bit about Paul Beck to sort of put this into some context. All the equipment that you see essentially came through Paul. I knew that was going to happen. Paul has been in the broadcast industry and television industry for how many years?
45.
45 years. And you can tell, just working with him, that it's what he enjoys. And over those years, he's also collected a lot of equipment through a variety of sources. For a lot of people who get donated equipment, he's sort of the middleman.
We should qualify that it's been legally acquired. And my wife, my beloved wife, who has had to put up with not all of this in the house, but she would think that that's normal for the basement. I'm one of the few people who will walk up to any broadcaster or any TV station and say, "That's a nice camera you have. Can I have it when you're through?" And that's basically how all of this has been acquired. All of it has come from local networks or stations as organizational discards. After it runs its 8 or 9 year life, it's passed on. And in my association with other schools and other organizations, we tend to beg, borrow, and not steal. But this is a list of some of the companies that have provided Bexonian. Well, that's what it was called. When it filled 8,000 square feet in 2 rental areas, it was called the Bexonian. But a lot of the equipment, just the camera that the picture of Neil Kaiser is running there, that camera when it was new was about $54,000. Now it's not even worth $54 because new technologies have come along. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have added life or sustained life with a little bit of nursemaiding. And let's face it, anything we do in the auditorium is not going to make it on CBS television.
Right.
So if it's not quite up to that standard, it's okay. Can we go back to the another one of the pictures, the starting up thing in the studio? We should, in 2004 when we were growing the thing, I should explain too that you've all seen telecasts come from that auditorium, whether it's a dramatic event or a music event, and you probably were never aware of how much time and effort goes into setting it up. Sometimes the crew has to be here at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning to run all the cameras, get them up into the catwalks, into the lighting pockets. Well, we've been doing this, it seems like, for 15 or 18 or maybe even 20 years, and it's a struggle. Well, along comes our big TV truck. More things are being televised in the town, be they sporting events or other civic events. There's a conflict, and we can't be doing 3 things in the same day. So with all the surplus of all this equipment and the cameras that you'll see in other pictures, the thought dawned on us, why don't we just put it all together, see if we can't build an event telecasting capability in the room, in the auditorium, have a control room dedicated for it. Mike O'Leary kindly made this old yearbook office available to convert over. He provided the electrical conversion for it. And, well, let's see some of the pictures, and I'll shut up and let you do some talking.
You know, as soon as I mentioned his name, he wanted to change the subject. This is a picture from 2004. This was really the beginning of the project. Paul Beck started to collect some of this equipment that he had gathered from those donors, and this is actually our studio down at 85 East Belcher Road. You can see a set of plastic racks that were sort of set up to simulate what the control room would look like, and he turned this into sort of a work area to start testing cameras and refurbishing some of the equipment. And then, as Paul said, in
It took too long.
In 2000, from 2005 to 2008, after we had an initial discussion with Mike O'Leary and the administration at the time, and they gave us approval to use that room back there adjacent to the auditorium, they went to town with setting up some racks in the room and some pedestals, and you can go to the next slide there. And this is probably the centerpiece of the control room. It's a very large production switcher that does a lot more things that we are not able to do even with the TV truck. So there's a lot of opportunities here. Now we are, after spending weekends and weekends, this was really a weekend project. This was not a 9 to 5 type of thing. It was whenever volunteers had time to come in and work on it. And Neil Kaiser and Mike Everson, who are in the back room right now, and Paul Beck were the ones that were coming in on a regular basis through some assistance with Mike O'Leary getting the building open for us to come in and get the heavy lifting done and get it complete. So it's now complete. We've actually taped 2 different events. We taped the Winterfest concert with this equipment, and I think it was just luck. The selectmen needed to move their meeting up here at the last minute, and it needed to go out live, and the facility was available. Of course, they didn't get the attendance that they were expecting, but we were ready to go nonetheless. So there's probably a couple more slides in here. We just wanted to show you what's been going on for the last 4 years. It's been a rather long project, and I'm not sure that all of you were even aware that the project was going on to this extent. There's just an example of one of the cameras.
There are 2 in the lighting control booth at the back, and if you go to the next slide, we may see some of the others. On the lighting pockets at either side, tucked in, there are a pair of cameras, and that's a rather unique departure from the traditional way that events are telecast. To be very frank with you, we don't often, as producers and directors, get to rehearse with the orchestra or with the choral group or the concert band. So in many, many ways, for the poor person who has to sit in the control room, wear the headset, and tell the cameras what to do, it might as well be a hockey game for knowing where they're going to go. So it's a very difficult thing. When you watch something like Symphony Evening at Pops, know that that's been rehearsed many, many hours. We don't have the luxury of doing that. And often you will see the horrible situation where a camera will be searching for somebody, they'll just zoom in, they'll dissolve, commit to the shot, the person's on, and they take the instrument out of their mouth and put it down. That happens an awful lot, and you get caught basically unawares. So the reason for 2 cameras is that in each of those 2 lighting pockets, there will be 1 operator, but 1 camera will be assigned to a group shot of 5 or 6 or 8 students, and the other one he or she will be operating to go and get singles. But there'll always be that escape shot to quickly go to very quickly in case that very thing happens, that the instrument, they put the violin down, or whatever the situation is. So it's sort of a backup thing. We built this, well, we'll go back, I'm sorry. This is we call it the black box. It's a little box backstage, and we hide the 3 cameras that are on the stages. Usually when we're televising an event on the stage, there's a camera in each wing and 1 dead center that shoots out to the conductor or to the center. But we're leaving them there backstage. Mr. O'Leary built that little magic box for us, and so far it's survived. Nobody's tampered with it, pulled the doors off, and we're kind of delighted that it seems to be surviving. So the little box that you see on the rack is microphone connections and other audio jacks and an intercom system. So as best as we can do it with the limited resources we have, it's a broadcast quality production facility for televising and videotaping any event, be it a civic event or music event or a dramatic event. And we're glad to have been part of it. And the team, the 2 people you can't see behind us here, Mike Everson and Neil Kaiser, they did all the hard work and all the brute work, and we really salute you.
Now that it's built, we see a lot of different uses for the facility. I don't think it's strictly Foxborough Cable Access, music concerts, and stuff like that. It's in the high school. There are opportunities to utilize the equipment that's there for teaching purposes. It certainly would be accessible to the student population. One of the things that we can't tape as a Foxborough Cable Access entity is school plays for copyright issues. But for in-house purposes, the school can tape their own play as long as it's not being aired. And that might be one use. And there's a variety of functions that go on within the auditorium that are either school-related or town-related, just because of the size and scope of the space. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities with the equipment. In some respects, it's a living, working museum in some respects because it's old-fashioned television. But again, it's working. And the other point I just wanted to make is that it is such a unique situation. I don't think you would ever see this anywhere else if it were not for maybe Paul moving out of the community or something, which I don't see happening. It's just Paul is the one that has access and has developed the relationships over the years to be able to have this equipment acquired, knowing that it's going to go to a good use, that Paul's not going to do anything with it other than have another group benefit from it. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Many of the donors, to amplify what Mike is saying, provide this stuff because they really, they don't want to pay to have it carted away and pay for the reclamation of things. They know that we'll find a place for it and put it into good use. And to be very candid, we haven't been blabbing about that because it's sort of like if you have a secret fishing hole, if you keep telling people about your fishing hole, pretty soon it's not going to be a secret and it will be fished out. So we have not been open and maybe tooting our horn about this because it is a rather successful thing to acquire all these things. The switcher, the gray panel there, is a very unique thing, and that came from ESPN. And it's a device that it's called a triple reentry switcher. It has 3 mix effects channels, so you can do split screens on top of split screens on top of split screens. And Neil Kaiser, the producer of the music events, is very excited about being able to put 5-way splits and circles with Mr. Massey in the middle and have them spin around. So it will be a very exciting thing from a television point of view for those of us who are studying and students of the television techniques and the technology. But it also, as Mike says, will be a good thing for the students. Even if the students under Mr. Roy or other teachers want to come in and experiment with television, if you're doing a dramatic situation, even if it is a copyrighted event, you are legally allowed, the TAMS music people, or whoever they are, TAMS Whitman, I guess, will allow you to do what is called an archival recording for your own purposes. And this device, this system here, could be used for that. And do it a little better than just a little camcorder. And that was our objective.
You've done a marvelous job.
We're
You
glad.
are certainly one of those heroes of the community, along with those others that you've mentioned that spent hundreds and hundreds of hours. The volunteers for the cable access, whether it be school committees, selectmen, whether it be the sporting events, the music events. We are very, very fortunate to have a handful, a dozen or so, whatever the number is, of volunteers who just give and give and give to the community. And the ability to watch basketball, to watch football, to watch the music programs, to watch the selectmen of the school committee is just a tremendous way to share back with the community. We're fortunate because we couldn't do it without the volunteers. Even if we had the equipment, we need the volunteers.
Absolutely.
And Mike, for the both of you, the team of volunteers, we just can't say enough for the work that they do.
Well, we thank you for the support as well. It really does take the community to pull it off. Tonight, we're looking for a couple things from the committee. We're hoping to get approval to hold a ribbon cutting for this facility. We'd like to do it on a Saturday, mid-morning type of situation where we'd simply have a small presentation and maybe some coffee and donuts or something so that people can tour the facility. We tentatively are looking at April 19th.
April 19th.
That's April, that's the first Saturday of April vacation.
School
So,
vacation.
School vacation.
Okay.
It's traditionally a long weekend too, Mike. Patriots Day lines up on Monday,
okay.
so.
We originally were looking at what the previous Saturday, but we thought that was a tight timetable. And we know that the following Saturday, people are now just getting back from vacation or whatever, so that's a
But
bad
that
weekend as
three-day
well.
weekend might not be
Yeah.
the best.
Well, I don't think there's any objection on the part of the school committee to hold the ribbon cutting ceremony. Why don't you work directly with Chris on a date that would work
Okay.
out for everybody, and then we'll publicize that both to the committee and to the community at large.
Okay.
But I don't see any objection from anybody for that. We'd be very happy to do that.
Okay, excellent. And then the second thing that we're asking is, we'd like to name the facility and the room so that it's identified. And the name that we have right now is the FCA TV Center at Foxborough High School, just so that we could potentially put a plaque on the door to identify it and to recognize it.
Chris, does that require a formal vote of the school committee?
It does, yes.
All right.
It does.
So do we have a motion to name the building, name the room, one more time, Mike?
The FCA TV Center at Foxborough High School.
Okay, we have a motion by Martha, a second by Bev. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries 5-0. So
Thank you.
named.
Excellent. Are there any questions that you folks have?
Go ahead, Chris, you go first.
Not really a question, Mike and Paul. I just want to tell you how important I think this is for Foxborough High School. Debbie and I were saying, and I've mentioned to you when we first met early in the fall, being able to have our students involved with this activity will be a key. And I know that when you invited me after the winter concert it's just magnificent. It's just a terrific facility. It will give us an opportunity to really make good use of it, and it's just another opportunity for us to partner. And I think we have a great partnership with cable access here in Foxborough, and this is a great idea. And Paul, for all of your work that you do to encourage, cajole, however you do this.
We'll give up the secrets though, right, how you do it.
We're not going to, we will publicize that too widely, but that's just magnificent. And the opportunity in that high school auditorium, which is a great facility in itself, this just really adds to it. So we're very appreciative, and I know that Neil and Mike in the back, you are duly noted, and we really appreciate your work on this as well.
On behalf of all of our, let's just give them a
Right.
Thank you very much. Okay. Continuing the note
Larry,
of...
before you move on, I think in keeping with the way in which we want to give recognition, it's always a little uncomfortable to name, but I think we're not naming an individual person, we're naming exactly what it is, FCA. But I'd just like to throw out there, maybe take a moment to discuss, it'd be nice if we had a plaque of some kind or metal plate to honor the Neil Kaiser, Paul Beck, and Mike Everson, who have committed all of these man-hours to developing this. That would perhaps be something that we could do to give a form of recognition in some way that can be hung in the new the FCA calendar.
Paul's actually already been working on having a plaque done. He has assured me that when we get through the budget cycle, he would have it done. We had hoped to have it before this evening so we could recognize all of them tonight. The plaque will recognize all of the volunteers who have done just so much for us. And so Paul should have that shortly.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't design it so that as more people come forward, we can...
It can be designed. It'll be,
Yeah, we can
Can
absolutely
add
put
Paul
to
has in his mind
Okay.
a large plaque where you can add.
because you might get new volunteers who want to certainly recognize it.
Right.
It's truly a wonderful labor of love and what a wonderful gift to our students and to the Foxborough
community.
community. It's tremendous.
Okay, continuing on the note of happiness and giving back to the community. We also have an acceptance of gift. Chris?
Thank you. Inventus, as we recognized, the organization and company recently has stepped up again, and they have donated $972.95, which we are planning to use for an Adobe CS3 design standard, a combination design layout program with 3 or 4 programs to use in our CAD program in the art department. So I need an acceptance of that gift, and again, thank you to Inventus for this.
I would like to.
Moved by Beverly to accept, second by Kate E. Katie. Discussion?
Many thanks.
All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries 5-0.
That is wonderful.
Could every agenda item be like this?
Right, yeah. The next item on the agenda is the 2008-2009 school calendar. Chris?
Thank you. Let me just walk the committee and the public through our process again. We discussed the calendar in some detail with this board. We have had an opportunity, and I say we, Debbie and I have been kind of leading this effort, I think, throughout the system. We've had an opportunity to share on 3 or 4 occasions with our administrators, principals, and directors. We've had the Teachers Association take a look at it and offer us some guidance. The Parent Leaders Group, PTO presidents, school council members, we shared it with them at a recent meeting. And we've been really going back and forth on this just to give the public an idea. The beginning of the calendar, I think, looks very similar to traditional Foxborough school calendars. We start with staff before Labor Day, and we have 2 staff development days. Just so that the public knows, the teacher contract is a 186-day work year for teachers, 180 days of teaching, and 6 days of professional development. And so we intersperse the professional development throughout the school calendar. We also build in some early release time for conferences. And one of the areas that we had talked about that we've actually pulled back from a little bit is we were thinking, given the fact that December 22nd and 23rd were the beginning 2 days of school before a longer school vacation time at the end of December and early January, we might package those 2 days. And we heard some good feedback, I think, from parents and from staff and from our administrators that maybe that's not the best way to do this, and to bring students back for just some events that we normally schedule. We might be pushing those into the week before, so really pushing the academics into that last full week that we have in December, and then having a day, and then having 1 day with faculty right before we break for our break in December and early January. And then the rest of the calendar, that allowed us, because we had actually, in an initial version, had actually packaged up all of our professional development before the first of the year, and decided that we would look again at a date in late January to do that right when the term closes. So we thought that made some sense in looking at this. The other area that came up with some parents, and we discussed with our administrators, and I know this board had some discussion last year, was around Jewish holidays and whether we would be celebrating Jewish holidays in the system. So what we did is we did an analysis, and we found there are 2 areas, at least in other communities where I've worked, 2 areas. One is the student population. Are there going to be a number of students that might be absent for religious reasons? And we found that wasn't the case in our analysis. The student absenteeism was about average on the days that other communities celebrated. And teacher absenteeism, some is driven by the faculty. And as I've said, and tried to build calendars over the years, and I know I said to you, I'm looking for the best 180 days where most students are in attendance that we can find in our calendar development process. So one of the things that I found that I think we need to do a better job of is making sure that people understand that we are respectful of all religions, and that there may be some work that we need to do around administrative practices, around making sure we don't have tests that are being prepared on those days, and those kinds of things. So, I'm willing and interested in working with the parent community. Small group has stepped forward and is interested, but I wanted the community to know that we did study this issue, and I think we did a good job studying it. We'll continue to monitor it as we go along and looking at the community and how we can best serve this community. So I think we did a good job of that, and I'm proposing that this is the calendar for the 2008-2009 school year.
We have a motion to approve the calendar. We have a motion by Martha, second by Beverly. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, Chris, we're making good progress so far tonight. Preschool update.
Okay, I know that the committee heard from our part-time early childhood director and director of special education and our IGO school principal about some opportunities to look at our preschool program and perhaps to make some changes. And I think in doing that, it also raised some other issues that we hadn't yet considered. We were possibly looking at taking our 5-day program and reducing it to a 4.5-day program, I think with all good intentions, and that was to have our faculty collaborate better around issues that we're seeing with students, and also to reach out more to our parent community, our preschool parent community. As we analyzed this more, we decided that we needed to study it more. And so we're not proposing any changes in our preschool program for next year. We've had our lottery, and we're going about business as usual. One of the things that I've asked the group to come back to me is to look at better ways that maybe we can collaborate, or maybe our faculty can collaborate, and maybe we can reach out to parents in a better way, but that keeps our preschool program, which we're very proud of, running in the same way. So I'm very pleased with that. I think, and I know the committee mentioned this, and I'm pleased that we're looking at our programs, we're analyzing our programs, we're suggesting some changes, we're putting those changes out to the public, and then sometimes we're saying, well, maybe we really don't want to do this. But at least we're taking that close look, we're analyzing our programs closely, and we're looking at other ways that we can do this work in a better way. So I'm very pleased about that. I wanted the public to know because I wanted to bring some closure to this discussion. I know that we did raise some concerns. One of the concerns that I had in looking at the analysis again was my goal is to actually reach out to more students. And this plan, I think, in the first year would have reached out to less. And that's not a good program. That's not a good way to plan our program to do that. So we learned some good lessons about that. I'm pleased that we learned those lessons. The other piece of this that I briefly mentioned when we were discussing this topic that we are going to do for, I think very good reasons, is in analyzing the program, we're looking at the preschool program, we think it may be better situated at the Borough School for a couple of very good reasons. One is the Borough School has capacity. It has classroom space in order to accommodate it. It also will give us a little more room to grow if we need to. The IGO school at this point in time doesn't give us any room. So if we identify more students and we have more students, particularly in the special education side, and we need to build programs because of that, having it at the IGO school gives us a little bit more room to do that. We also know that it'll be a smoother transition for some of our special education students who transition into a kindergarten, a full-day kindergarten program at Borough. So this will be, I think, an easier transition for them. And then most importantly, certainly from my vantage point, someone who lives in that space now, I see some concerns about drop-off and pickup. And the program right now is housed in maybe two of the busiest streets we have in the community, on South Street and Carpenter. It's a very busy area, and as I'm coming and going, and we see that frequently. So We have an opportunity to move it. Debbie and Ingrid Alardi and Michelle McCarthy, principal at Borough, and I had an opportunity, Mike O'Leary, because there may be some logistic issues that would present themselves, had an opportunity last week to visit the Borough School. We're looking at, students would come in off of Cocasset Street, would be looking at that side entrance. We'd be looking at some little bit of facilities upgrade that Mike is working on, and working with Paul Jackson and looking at some of that. So we think there's a lot of benefit to housing it there in much more of a long-term way. It will also open up a little bit of space for full-day kindergarten and some other things at the IGO school. And it'll give all of our elementary schools will be close to the same number of students overall, even though they won't have the same configuration necessarily, because we'll have a preschool. So they'll all be in the 375 to 400 range, rather than have one at 500 and one at 300. So we see a lot of benefits to that. I mentioned to the group last week that I wanted to make it public so that people understood all of our rationale for it. And so we're looking operationally for that to take place.
So that will be for this coming school year?
This coming school year, yes.
Questions from the committee?
I just want to say, I'm really glad that, you did look at the program and a little bit more closer, and the traffic issue has been a problem for years. Truly has been, I'm sure, as the program has grown more, since I know my children have attended. So I think that's great that the borough may satisfy that kind of problem over there with traffic issues. So.
Matt?
No, great idea.
Kate?
I'm sure the parents are very excited about this.
Great. Thank you for the thoughtful analysis.
It's not just me, we had a lot of people chiming in.
No, but it's a job well done.
Okay, this next item is Taylor School Principal Search Process, and I think that, Chris, we need to start by helping people understand why there's a process. In other words, not everybody got the word that Kay was retiring, so I think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about that and then talk about the process.
Sure, good. No, that's a very good place to start. Kay Naylor, who all of us know as the principal of the Taylor School, who has been working in the Foxborough Public Schools for the last 43 years and working in public education for 47 years, certainly at the end of this year, announced about 3 weeks ago that she was interested in retiring at the end of the school year. Now, this was a conversation that Kay and I have had for a couple of months. She was intent, at least thinking strongly about this, really moving on for in another phase of her life and interests that she has. And if you have a chance to sit down with Kay for 5 minutes even, you will get a sense of all the interests that she has outside of school. So she really is enjoying this from our discussions, and we have had quite a few discussions. She has said publicly that this is a great opportunity for her to finish her career here and to move on to some other ideas that she had. I have said to her that I'm interested in, I believe she'll still be in the area, in continuing to have her as part of our leadership team and to working on issues that she knows a lot about. So I think that's going to happen at some level, depending on how busy she is, I think, more than how busy we might be. So Kay has announced publicly, she announced to her faculty, she actually gave me a letter on Wednesday, February 27th. She announced to her faculty that day and sent a note home to the parent population. I then was able to meet with the PTO I met with the PTO on March 11th, and I met with the Taylor faculty on March 13th to describe the process. So I think in many people's minds, this is a great opportunity for Kay to do some other things, and I'm really pleased for her because I think she, as I have said publicly, she has made an enormous difference in this community. She has affected the lives of many, many people in Foxborough. She has still a number of people that come back and visit and send her notes and all of that. I have said the one thing, I've said this to both the faculty and the PTO, the one thing that we disagree about is that she'd like to go out without any fanfare. And I've said to her, I know this community too well, and I believe that's impossible. So we disagree about that, and we publicly, I think we publicly disagree about that. But at the same time, Kay and I had some discussions about when to announce, and again, not wanting any fanfare, she would like to, I think probably would like to have waited until, and as long as I call normal snow days, June 20th. It's like our last day of school. I think she would have liked to have waited until maybe the 20th, maybe the 19th. But we've had some good discussion, and she understands that there's a second part to this announcement, and that is, how do we go about bringing in a principal for the Taylor School for this summer and certainly for the start of the school year. So that part of it, Larry, I'm glad you reminded me about that, because I think that part of it is important to continue to discuss. And I know that Kay and I know Debbie has met with her, and I know Paul has talked to her, and others have had conversations with her about making sure that this part of the school year is a very positive part of the school year for Kay and the Taylor School, and I think it will be. Now, having said all of that, we have begun the search process. We advertised the position in the Boston Globe in Education Week, and we've put it on many of our professional association websites. So we have begun the process, the search process for a new principal at the Taylor School. Just so that the public knows, we are closing that process on April 4th, which is a Friday. So we've given it about a month, which is, I think, pretty typical of an opening and posting vacancies, administrative vacancies. It's what we've done for our assistant superintendent opening that we had in the summer, and for our director of special education opening that we've recently had. We will begin the screening process the very next week, during the week of April 7th. And at this point in time, I'm putting together a screening committee. And one of the things that I'll ask the chair is for a couple of members of the school committee who might volunteer to be part of the screening committee and as I say, and I've said this many times now, it seems, the charge of the screening committee is to just work an open process in terms of how you structure yourself, and to send 3 to 5 unranked finalists to me. And I have asked for 3 to 4 parents to step forward, and so they've been sending us letters and emails, interest, and I said to the parent community, I want to make sure that we have a diverse group, so that we have parents representing different grade levels and some history in the school, and also some newness to the school. I think it would be important. I talked to the faculty and said the same thing. I'd like some people who have been working in the school for a number of years, and I'd like some people who haven't, so that we have a mix of faculty as well. I mentioned school committee representation. Debbie and I have met. They have a couple of very active community members, one who works in the school as a senior citizen, and a person who is on their school council. So we may end up with a community representative on that screening committee. Debbie will chair that committee, as she has chaired the Director of Special Education opening, and I'll be working with our administrators to balance that committee. So we typically have anywhere between 12 and 15 people working that process, and I know some of you have worked that process. When the finalists come to me, and I'm hoping that's just in a rough timeline, sometime around the first week of May, I then go through the reference checking process, and I interview. I have others come in. Paul has come in for interviews with final candidates and other positions. And then for a principalship, I always invite each candidate to spend a day at the school. And then depending on what they're doing, decide whether I want to go out and visit where they're working right now. So that's a little bit, my experience has been, depending on what they're doing, that can be valuable. In some cases, it's not as valuable. But it is valuable for the candidate, each candidate, to visit the school for the day. We'll be setting up structured times when people can meet. And then what I'll do, what I've typically done, is I then visit the school over the next week and discuss people's ideas about what that candidate pool looks like.
Chris, now, that process you just described might lead someone to believe that you're only looking at outside candidates. And I know that you shared with me that all candidates, both current employees of the Foxborough School District and those that are outside, will be considered. So while you talk about him spending a day at the school or maybe going to visit them, that doesn't exclude internal candidates from being viable candidates for the position.
Exactly, and that's why I don't always visit, because if we had an inside candidate, I wouldn't be visiting them. But they would visit the school, though.
Right.
Because they'd be spending a day with the faculty, looking at the school schedules and visiting
Unless they already
classrooms.
work at the school.
Unless they work at the
You know,
school, and that could be.
We don't know who's going to apply and who's not. But,
Right.
I mean, I guess I wanted to reinforce to our employees that it's incumbent upon us to do the broadest search we can to get the best possible candidate. But we also have to make sure that we're looking within our system and we're developing our own internal employees. There'll be a feeling if we always hire from the outside that there's no promotional opportunity, and then you'll lose good people. So there has to be a balance in making sure that those that apply are balanced between internal and external candidates, and everyone is given the same fair opportunity. And Chris has assured me that that's the way it will work. So.
And I'm hoping to present someone to you, not for a vote, but to present someone to you in June. If everything goes well, as I said to the faculty and to the parents, that transition before school is over would be helpful. We'll see how that goes as we move through the process.
So you'd like to have 2 people from the school committee?
I would.
Do we have 2 volunteers from the school committee to work on this? We have Katie. Katie has volunteered. Martha, are you shaking your head? Yes, Katie volunteered.
I've done a couple, so I would, bow to somebody else that would like to do it at this point.
I would like to do it, but if someone else.
I'd be willing to do that.
All right, so you and Katie? Okay,
That'd be
there's your
good
2
team.
volunteers.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else on that one, Chris?
That's it, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jackson, you're up next.
I do not have a monthly budget statement for the committee tonight. I will have it at the next meeting.
And that is directly related to the tan you're wearing, I presume.
That's part of it, yes.
You are entitled to vacation from time to time, so I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
I did, thank you.
Excellent.
It wasn't long enough.
It may be, Paul, we had a discussion today about, the work that I know Paul and his team is working on around the budget, and we still have, from our last discussion, a deficit in the work that Paul's doing. You may want to talk a little bit about the kinds of things you're going to do in the next couple of weeks that I wouldn't predict anything, just what we typically do in the spring.
Once we get over the winter hump, we really try to take a hard look at our heat account, and we actually review it on a monthly basis by school anyway, and had we been in trouble, I would have been pointing that out to the committee earlier on, but we've been in a favorable position. But there have been some winters when we've had a warm winter, and then we have a very cold spring, so it's not something that you can really predict too early. But once we get this next heating bill, Michael Leary and I sit down and we take a look at it, and then we actually project what we think we'll use, and we're conservative for the balance of the year, and then we actually look at it very closely at the end of every month and then say, well, we need to put a little more money into the account, or we can take some money out. And we'll take a hard look at that. We're taking a hard look month over month at the out-of-district transportation and the tuition account, and that's something that we've been looking at very closely for months now. Electric account is another account that we take a look at, and we'll start to project. And the big, if it's cold out, our unit ventilators run longer. When we get toward the end of the school year, if we have a really hot late spring, early summer, we end up spending more on electricity for air conditioning. So there are a lot of variables that come into play, but we start taking a hard look at that. Because of the way we pay our bus drivers, we start to take a look at how many runs are we actually going to have from now to the end of the year, and what are we going to have to pay, and we estimate on sick time or personal time. Bus fuel is another account. We budgeted $2.30 a gallon for bus fuel. We've been paying $2.60 a gallon, which is quite a bit under market, but we do not have to pay a lot of the taxes that the average consumer pays at the pump. Currently, our bus fuel is about $5,000 projected in the red for the balance of the year. When we redid the bus routes a year or so ago, we reduced the number of gallons that we were expecting to utilize because of more efficient routes, plus we had reduced the bus, and then the changes that we made with the Metco operation. We're actually using fewer gallons than we had conservatively projected. That's what's really helped us absorb that extra 30 cents a gallon on the fuel. I did talk to Randy Scollins today, and I'll be surprised if we don't see a price increase in fuel between now and the end of the year. So that's an account that we will monitor very closely. And then there are certain accounts that we do not pay, that are salary accounts, but that we do not pay on a regular basis. They get paid twice a year or 3 times a year. We'll start to take a hard look at that to try to do some projections along with the substitute account. We actually do some run rates, and we take a look at what do we historically run for the second half of the year or the last quarter of the year on substitutes, and we'll reproject that account. So now we're over the halfway point. We're at a point where we can really start to make some projections based on the fact that we've got the actual bills in for the first 7-8 months of the year. So that now is the time that we start to get a little bit more accurate and start to have the ability to free up some money. Had any of the accounts that we'll look at that I'm hoping to free some money up in look like it was going to be in a deficit situation other than transportation, bus fuel, I would have been including those numbers in the budget monthly statement update. However, I don't expect to free up, hundreds of thousands of dollars. There'll be some money that I know will be favorable, but it isn't certainly going to take us out of the deficit situation that we're in overall right now. So.
Paul, let me just add a couple of comments for the public. First of all, the deficit situation that Paul's referring to, remember at a prior meeting we discussed the fact that we had a number of new students move into the community that required special educational needs, and some additional students who didn't require needs last year that required needs this year. As a result, that particular line item for special education and transportation is up approximately $250,000 over what we scheduled. With the exception of that one blip, the budget is running pretty close to where we figured both on the salary side and on the expense side. So first of all, what we'll be able to save in utility cost, heat and electricity, will help reduce that overage in the special education area, but it won't eliminate it. What we've talked about as a committee is that we have a revolving account which we will be able to use to fund this overage. Now, in discussions with the town officials over the fiscal 09, we got into a good discussion around fiscal 08. And part of this discussion centered around how did the school committee's budget get so tight to begin with? In other words, the town has an account for $105,000, a line item. And so as things come in that are a surprise or unexpected, they can fund it out of that particular account. The schools in the past have always had, we'll call it a surplus in the salary line because of retirements and other kinds of things. Over the last couple of years, what this committee has chose to do, and you can criticize it or you can endorse it, it's up to you, but what we've chose to do is instead of eliminating certain programs or not reinstituting certain programs and leaving that money in the budget as a cushion, and then if we didn't have an unexpected event like in the prior 2 years, we would just give that money back. But if you do that, then what happens is the programs that you didn't fund never got funded, and that money you gave back, you can't take that year back and re-educate, whether it be guidance or whether it be math specialists, whatever. So what we've chose to do as a committee, again, you can agree or disagree, was that rather than keep this kind of a cushion of what would be equivalent of about $250,000, we've worked with the town side and we've worked with the advisory committee to really run our salary numbers as tight as we can, run our expense numbers as tight as we can, so that we could fund the programs that we thought would have the biggest impact on our students. And if you look at the last 3 years, with the exception of this one spike in the special education, I think it's worked very well to our favor. In this particular case with the special education, we have the revolving account to take care of that. But if it were to become a long-term situation, these students stay here for the next 5 or 10 years, it is going to certainly have a major financial impact on us going forward. Special education in our town and in virtually every town in the state has been rising dramatically. It's causing a financial crisis in many communities and budget issues in many communities. But despite that, I think that the controls we put in, the oversight we put in, the way we budgeted as just an individual, I think we've done a very good job of balancing those needs, and we'll get through this year as well. Regarding the 09 budget as it stands tonight, the town, unlike most of the other communities that are struggling with a $2 or $3 million budget shortfall, the shortfall that we're looking at as a community is about $220,000. And I'm in discussions now with the municipal side, both Chris and I and Paul. We will come back to this committee with a recommendation. Obviously, with a deficit of $220,000, we've been asked to go back and take a hard look at our expenses, and the municipality has been asked to take a hard look at theirs as well. What I want to say is that while on one hand one could argue that, gee, we're only 220 short, Mansfield's $2 or $3 million, Franklin's a couple of $1 million, I guess the caution that I want to put forth is that while we may squeak through with a very, very tight budget on the municipal side and on the town side for fiscal 09, the problem we have is a tremendous amount of pressure in the terms of benefits. Health care is increasing double digit, and that is now almost 10% of the total budget. And don't forget, we offer retiree benefits, and so employees, once they hear, for instance, this year there's like 11 people retiring, well, we replace them with 11 people, so that's 11 new people on the health insurance program. And so the health insurance continues to be a big cost of the budget. Retirement costs are another big charge, and the pension costs are, as I understand it, Paul, you can correct me, but they're underfunded across the county, and our assessment this year is a couple $100,000 higher than we were anticipating in order to make up some of that unfunded liability. So number one, we got a lot of pressure on the benefit side as a community, like every other community. And then we have the pressure of salaries. And if you look at Proposition 2.5, which allows you to raise taxes at 2.5% plus new growth, when you have the cost of benefits rising as quickly as they are, then you have the cost of special education rising as quickly as it has, then you have these other kinds of things like fuel for the police cars, fuel for the fire trucks, fuel for the school buses, etc. We have lots of non-salary things that are increasing much faster than we can raise taxes. That means since there's a balloon with only so much air in it, if you squeeze one end, it just goes someplace else, and that puts even more pressure on the total salary. So my point is that while I feel comfortable we'll negotiate something to get us through fiscal 09, I do want to caution the school committee, as the selectmen have cautioned the community on their side, that fiscal 10 is going to be extremely difficult. The state has increased its funding this year primarily because the governor was expecting to get casinos through. As we now know, the legislature did not agree to the casinos. They're going to fund his extra money this year through the rainy day account, which means that that's not a guaranteed funding for fiscal 10. And those of you that were on the committee a number of years ago know what happened the year that state funding was cut, not just level funded, not just increased by 2%, but actually cut. That kind of situation could happen again in fiscal 10 because of the budget shortfall at the state level. So I only say that as an effort to encourage parents to get involved and understand what we do. We're going to have to look at all of our programs. It's not for fiscal 09, it's going to be for fiscal 10. But we're going to have to start planning early, and that's why we want to, as we said, do this 5-year plan, so we can update you as a committee, we can update the community. What do we think the impact in fiscal 10 and beyond is going to be? I say that because both the municipal side and the school side are in the process of negotiating with employees. And, we would love to give employees as much as we could, but there is going to be some very difficult times over the next couple of years because of the economic conditions. And we have to take that into consideration as we're negotiating, as we're looking at benefits, as we're looking at everything that we do. And I've asked Chris and Paul if, once we get through this budget cycle, if we could schedule a couple of meetings where we spend just time looking at the kinds of programs we have, and are there different ways of delivering those services, are there different ways of adding those services, really kind of starting with a clean piece of paper from kindergarten right up through high school, and be thinking about what are we delivering, how are we delivering it, is it the most effective way of delivering it. There's been some discussion back and forth, paperwork on, does small class sizes really have the impact people thought? Should we have higher class sizes, small class sizes? There'll be lots of discussions. I don't think that's going to impact us for fiscal 09, but it is going to have an impact in 010. And Chris will start scheduling, once we get through this budget, some time for us to start thinking well in advance of how we address fiscal 010 and the impact that could have. Martha, question?
I think one of the biggest concerns we as a community and as a school committee have to deal with is when you look around Foxborough, the amount of building that's going on, and how is it going to impact the school system. We have no way of knowing how many children might be moving into this system. And some of the projects, we've quoted one number, and our expectations, when you look at the projects that are coming in, it's really not believable that the number's going to be that small. So I think we need to have someone tell us how many new houses are up and ready, and what the potential is, and an honest assessment of what's going on in this town, because I'll tell you, we could be in serious trouble.
Well, Martha, we've
They
addressed...
filled all those houses with children.
We've talked to the selectmen about that, and, one of the comments is, building is kind of stalled. On the other hand, when I drive up to the old state hospital, they've built quite a lot of houses up there, and many of them have been sold.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we do have homes that are being sold, and you could have someone leaving with no children, and people moving in have 2 or 3 children. So
don't have a handle
what I've
on
said to the selectmen is you just can't say with a recession you won't see an increase in students. In fact, we could. And that we're watching that very closely. And as a matter of fact, I shared with them that over last summer, unbeknownst to us at the time, more children moved in than we thought, and it had an impact on the number of students in a class. And that when we put our budget together this year, we were anticipating what we thought the enrollment might be, and we have 1 or 2 teachers that I'll call them flex teachers, that will fill those positions based on where the enrollment is or isn't. If the enrollment doesn't materialize, this committee has demonstrated in the last 3 years fiscal responsibility. We won't hire a teacher just for the sake of hiring a teacher. We won't spend the money for the sake of spending it. But on the other hand, what we didn't want to do when we put our budget together was to bare bones everything, and then if more students moved in, not be able to react. So we'll work through that. But that's an issue we've been discussing with the selectmen, because it could have a real impact on us as we move forward. And even though it's slow right now, it doesn't mean, there's a lot of houses up at that state hospital that have been built and people moved into. I've asked Chris actually to go through and calculate the number of students so far that have moved in as a result of the state hospital project and compare that to the original projections that we had. And I want to kind of start comparing the presentations that were made to us as to the impact on the students with the actual numbers, so that we can kind of keep ahead. And as other developers are coming into town and they're saying what kind of an impact it's going to have, if we have some history, we'll be able to better be prepared to argue some of their numbers.
Well, when people shop around and they look for a town or a system, we have a very attractive system. We have a lot to offer students, and parents are well-versed on what they want for their children. So Foxborough is very attractive to parents, and we have to stay on top of the numbers.
Any other comments on the monthly budget statement or the fiscal 09 budget? Okay, Martha, we're running ahead of time, so hopefully we can get to executive session earlier. We have the second reading of the policy manual, so let me turn this over to you so that we can finish this evening.
We're going to kind of tag team with Wendy on this, and she sent us out some information. And we still are missing some policies that still need to come back to us, and certainly people are still working on them. So what I'd like to do, this is the second reading of what we have in hand. So I'd like for us to act on this unless we have some problems with what we've offered. This is our second reading, so, Wendy, what do you think?
There are only a couple of policies that had minor changes from the last meeting, and those are noted. There were a couple of changes on the holds list. A couple were released and a couple were put on hold. And we thought about taking all the holds, finishing them, and doing the same process we did with the policy manual.
Yep.
So in all those as a groups with the first reading and then with the second reading.
Okay.
So that we don't lose any here or there, or make sure that it's a complete package.
So what you gave us, we can, if we pass on this tonight, we can just go ahead and incorporate it in what we have here. If we've got something that says revised, then it's up to each committee member to take out the one that's here, and they're color-coded different, so that you'll know that it's been a revision. The ones that we have are green, and the ones that Wendy has revised, then come back to her, are pink. So what you're going to do is take out the one that's there and insert this in your book.
What I will do, Martha,
Reinsert the pink.
is after all of this is approved, I'll have to go back and put the approval date right on
Okay.
the policy when it was adopted.
That's fine.
And then each member will get a clean white copy
When
of
it's
the
all done.
official manual.
Okay.
When it's
And we
all
know
done,
when
we'll
it's-
each have,
Yeah, and we know when
so
all
this
the
is still
policies were
considered a
adopted.
working copy,
Yes.
or in processing.
Now, the other thing, for anybody who has a book, we've got a record of who has it, so that we can call on it to come in
Yeah.
and get it revised, because we don't want any books out on the countryside that are not up to date. So, we just need to keep track of that. And I think once we're done, I think our intention is probably to have one of these at the library, or will it be online?
We'd like to have one
Online.
Okay, and also if we can have one at the
Library.
library, okay?
Right, and that makes the revision, when we have to do legislative updates and things,
Yeah.
that will make it easier.
Well, and don't forget, one of the pluses of having MASC involved with putting this together is if and when a mandate comes up from the state, they will contact us so that we're not having to second guess any changes, which I think is huge, so.
And that way, if it's online, it can be immediately
Right.
available to the public.
All right, does anybody have a problem with anything that we have?
I love the process. I think this is going to be great, but we did say we were going to hold until Bev was here to talk
Right.
about the human resources, and I think it's just about there, but.
What is, give us a number?
That's GA.
Is that one that's still on hold?
No, there were just some
okay.
fine tune, we didn't want to change it, we wanted to have Bev here because we had asked Jim Hardy to make some changes, and it seems like it's just not all of them were incorporated. I think because he was trying to, see, this is, you wanted to leave the first paragraph, and we reworked the paragraph for him, but not all of it. He changed it back to school district from what we had, and it's, because we wanted to put in students and citizens. Bear with me just a minute, guys. You see what I'm saying? So it's more grammar than, and I want to make sure you're comfortable with it, because you.
So
wanted that
so you
first
would like
paragraph.
it, right, I wanted this in, so your suggestion now is that it read to the students and citizens of Foxborough,
Right.
to ensure the highest quality. I'm comfortable with that. They have the additional responsibility to articulate the expectations of the district relative to, I'm comfortable with both of those.
Okay.
We just wanted
It's
to-
just a little,
Why don't you give that back to Wendy, and she can give it to us, and we'll accept the revision as,
Yeah.
okay?
So you can give her
whoops.
this one. That's whichever one's easier. Whichever one's easier. Which color would you like? That one may be easier to deal with.
right, there are
Hey,
plenty-
she's gonna turn it into a pink one and give it back to us, so it doesn't
Yes.
We
go.
have one more, so we'll hold on to just for a minute.
Okay.
We'd also just said the health and wellness, and that's, we've got.
What
two-
section?
Well, it's I, where we talk about, we had said it, we wanted to call, it's not health education, but with,
Which paper?
that is
It's a yellow.
IHAM. IHAM.
Health and wellness education is the title?
Right, we said, it's really health and wellness, and he had put that in for us, but it seems, you had said, Bev, that you wanted to have, because it's not, we changed the title to reflect our health and wellness policy, so it's health and wellness education, and it's just a minor nit, the very last paragraph, it seemed like Jim evidently went back to the mask version, which was just talking about the general health education.
Okay.
So
the
we
last-
wanted it to read health/wellness.
No, health and, I thought you said.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
yeah.
health/wellness.
Okay.
The title would be health and wellness education, if you want.
Okay, then why don't you give that to her, and she'll give us a pink one revised on that, and we'll accept that, okay? Do you have anything?
And do we know if our health and wellness, we weren't sure if that, the actual policy, because we wanted to put in that we would have a committee. And have we, and that's the new policy that we're accepting tonight? I just want to clarify that.
I'm not following what you're saying.
We had said on our health and this is under instruction, health and wellness education. We have another policy, I don't even know how to find it, on health, wellness, policy that we, as a school committee, have put, and Jim was making some changes, and I'm not going to be able to, we just want to make sure that if we're approving it tonight, because we wanted to keep the fact that we have a committee that's going to meet once, or meet throughout the year, right?
Well, I think that was part of the policy anyway, the previous policy that we had.
Right, and we wanted to keep that. So
Right,
I
so
just
do
want to
you know
check
where
if
it
we're
is in
approving
here?
it tonight, that it's, that
Do
it's,
you know where it is in here?
I have no idea, Martha. I can't even find it.
Is it ADF? Just,
ADF?
I don't know, let me just check ADF.
ADF
Yeah,
as well.
you got it, very good, Larry, yep. So,
Wellness. Okay. Okay.
so this is, that is,
Do you want to make sure that was in there, Kate?
could we just check for a moment, because we said this would be as is, and we want to make sure that the,
I don't
You
think we
wanna-
changed it, did we?
no, but you felt very strongly about having the committee, so I just want to make sure.
Right,
that-
but this is what the
Right.
committee wanted.
Well, see, don't forget, some of this, when you read the first paragraph, part of the updating will be because of guidelines updated through the student handbook, so it's a work in progress, it's not something that's, if you make this too tight, then it doesn't allow for the leeway with the handbooks, and I think the handbooks
Right, but
will-
I think we wanted to leave it as is. just-
Yes.
We're just
Yeah.
double checking.
Right.
But it's not as is, because the thing that Jim Hardy left off is the fact that we had established a committee, and we wanted to, you felt very strongly, and I think we all felt strongly in the summer, that we wanted that committee to, we had said we would have.
I think the committee has to stay.
It has
As
to
a
say,
standing committee.
isn't that
And
by
that-
state?
That was, we
Yeah.
had written that as part of our first policy, that's what I'm saying. And in the final revised policy, it no longer appears. So are we going to state that as a matter of policy, or we're going to leave it just general?
I think we're
I'm
going to
sorry,
leave
can
it.
I just ask for clarification, since I wasn't here last summer? What exact committee are you talking about, and who was on the committee?
There was a committee that was put together that came up with this policy. Bev
Came
was
up
on
with
it.
this ADF
Yes.
policy? Okay.
All right. Bev, who was on that committee?
There were two nurses,
Martha Dooley.
sports,
Yeah.
Martha Dooley, Betsy O'Coin, Sharon Kelly, Mrs. Mortensen as a parent, myself as school committee, and as administrator it was Jan Norton.
Okay. And the ongoing purpose of the committee going into the future is?
To constantly review this and make sure it's in compliance with the guidelines. put
With
out
the
by
guidelines, and Martha.
So it's like a
Martha
wellness
Dooley-
advisory committee?
Yes.
A wellness advisory committee is what it was.
Thank you.
Yes.
But I think the other thing that, when you look, in order to meet changing regulations and recommendation, guidelines will be updated and provided through student handbooks. In other words, we have to keep You just can't let it go by the wayside. It has to be updated. And part of the updating will be when you do the handbook anyways.
Right, and like
Absolutely, but we had said, we liked some of the wording that Mask used, but we had just spent a lot of time and effort, you chaired that we wanted to leave our own policy, and Jim heard that and said, okay, then we'll leave that committee written in the policy. And that's fine, I just want to be clear, because it's no longer in that. So if we're approving that, then we're not saying that we're gonna maintain that as part of our written wellness policy.
But is that not intrinsically part of it?
It
Jim
is
said
part of it.
it wasn't required, but we
No, it's
felt
not
very
required, but if you look at
strong.
number 9, the assistant superintendent will assess all education curriculum materials pertaining to wellness. I think that's what's going to keep us on top of it. True?
So we
I think there are a lot of committees that are important, and I don't know if in your policy you have to name every committee.
Right.
Correct.
I think it's just going to be the job of that committee to continue to look at it. Is that correct? I'm just looking for clarification.
That's right, but
we
here
felt
with
so
this.
strongly about it that we actually had that written in the policy. So my question is, before I approve it
No, I
tonight,
didn't, no,
I don't remember, I really don't, Kate, I don't remember it being in there.
I think having the assistant superintendent on top of it, we know Martha Dooley constantly
Yeah.
updates us, and so Sharon Kelly comes here and updates us.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is the student handbooks each
Yeah.
year.
That's what I'm saying, those have to be
Yes,
updated.
updated. So in that first paragraph, we're saying in
Between
order to meet
this and
changing
this.
regulations, I think we're covered.
Between those two, at the beginning, at the end here.
I don't know, as you need the committee to, you needed the committee to put this together.
At the beginning,
Now you
Right.
need somebody to carry it
Oversee it,
on, and
right.
that would be
the assistant
the
superintendent.
assistant
And that's one of her,
superintendent.
it's listed as one of her responsibilities.
and see, I think that is a very acceptable interpretation, except that we said we wanted to have somebody from the school committee to take strategically looking at wellness. We're not taking away from the assistant superintendent or our food manager or the wonderful job our principals or our
Yeah,
health
but I
people
don't know
do.
if that's our responsibility.
We don't have to, but we had said that that was the one thing that made our policy from the top down important, because wellness is important to us. And we can say that we're going to go with this.
We shouldn't be doing curriculum or any of that.
No, I'm not saying, we don't do curriculum, we don't do student handbooks, we have the staff in place. But from a strategic point, Martha, of taking a look at wellness overall, system-wide, have we moved, and these things will be implemented, but have we moved our wellness forward, okay, which is the real intent behind this. For instance, we heard last fall that 33% of our students have a BMI index that puts them in an obese category. Well, we have individual professionals, pardon me? Sharon Kelly came and presented.
I don't remember if it was
But
that,
there's
but it was
a-
a lot, it was an alarming
It was
number.
like 33%.
Right,
And
it was
so
larger
It's
than-
not the individual contributors and the talented staff. We want, is this still an important issue for the school committee? And if it is, then we may want to have, a committee that meets once a year just to say, it's not to redo anything in terms of what individual people have done, but where are we today? And are we moving the district forward?
I'll tell you, I'm neutral on this because I wasn't part of your conversations, and it's up to you to decide what to do, but I'm all for a wellness advisory committee because I think individual people could also then be liaisons to the district attorney's office, the task force in the area, the wonderful new organization side of the community for drug and alcohol awareness, all of those things. It would be great to have people connected to that, and then be also part of our committee. I'm just confused about if the school committee wants to have a committee about wellness. I mean, we have other. We're going to have a committee about
Of everything.
math or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's important to you, and as that should
We
be.
need to put this into the policy. I mean, I think it's, with Debbie overseeing it, any concerns, we always form.
It'll always come back to us if there's a radical change, so I just,
Well, I guess if you forget the policy for a minute, what I'm hearing Kate say is we as a group have spent time, we've spent calories around
Good word.
weight and around obesity. And we talked when we did our off-site strategic planning session that one of the key things we should be talking about is the growing obesity problem across America, and particularly in our schools. And what I'm hearing her say is she doesn't want to lose that discussion, lose that dialogue, lose that public interaction. Regardless of what the policy says, I still think and because I agree with Kate, it's very, very important. We could have on our agenda twice a year a presentation by the assistant superintendent, the nursing staff, et cetera, where we're specifically talking about what are the things we're doing relative to wellness, obesity, and other kinds of things, other than just having a committee. Because I think having it discussed at this level with the public being able to see it, hear it, the newspaper being able to cover the story, helps us get more coverage around the growing obesity problem. And as I said, I don't remember if that's the right number, but it was an alarming number. Whatever it was an alarming number, and one that reinforced that we need to do something. And it needs to be something that the committee is very proactive on. So from that standpoint, I would support Kate's recommendation that we maybe leave the policy as is, but we take and we make sure it gets on our agenda a couple of times a year, and that the assistant superintendent and the staff brief us on what they're doing in respect to all of wellness, but in particular on what are we doing to address the growing obesity problem in the Foxborough schools.
I'm comfortable with that, because my whole purpose, Larry, was just to note that we made a significant change, and I'm comfortable with whatever way we wanted to do it, but it is a change. We are omitting something, so it's important that we as a group say, okay, now we are going to omit it, and it's a conscious rather than an oversight.
We may omit it, but we're not going to forget it, and we're going to keep the focus on it.
Right.
I think I'm comfortable
And
with
Deb,
that.
you certainly heard now loud and clear how important that is to us as a committee.
Absolutely.
All right?
In fact, I'd be happy to do the update before the end of the school year. That way we know where we are at the end of this year, and we can go forward.
That would be excellent.
Excellent.
And
Okay.
it makes some of the parents feel very comfortable going into the summer, having had an update too.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else? Dedicate?
Three things.
That's fine, that's fine. All right, so I guess we need a wonderful motion to accept what we have in place.
Make a motion?
We have a motion by Katie and a second by Kate to approve
What we have in hand.
what we have in the book,
The
in the
second
policy manual after the second reading. Is that the appropriate way to do it, Chris? A motion to approve and a second?
And a second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations to this committee.
What a
These
change.
policies have been over 20 years old. They've been long overdue. It's taken us, I guess, a year to do it.
Which is amazing.
But it is-
Most communities take 3 years.
This was record time.
And now we will be able
Even
to keep
mask
this
is
up to date on an annual basis, so.
I asked Wendy to send a letter on our behalf to Jim Hardy and thank him personally for his effort, because I think he was a non-believer when we first started this and said we're going to do this. So I just want him to know how much we appreciate the time and effort, and the Friday nights that he gave up to be with us, and to the committee for the Friday nights. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Could I also ask, and I just want to say thank you, Wendy, for what you did, because if not, I could not have moved forward. This
Yeah.
made it very
No, it made it
clear.
very clear.
And I'd say we're 90% there, but just to point out to the public, it's not 100%, because we still need to do some work, and just to assure everyone, that work has been going on by our administrators. The instructional section is being looked at. We've got others that really, I think it's very important to us that the administrators keep meeting and keep working that, and to have this running list, and no one can come back and say, well, you did it. Well, no, because we have a hold list on those that we've excerpted out of that, and I think that that's important to keep in mind.
Can I
So
just-
you'll do this for us too with the changes, Wendy?
Yeah.
Yep, that's great.
I just pick up on what Kate said, because I do think it's important. We do have items on the hold list, and I think this process worked in terms of separating those out, not trying to put them in now, because you have to go through a first reading and a second reading again in order to adopt those. So I think what it did is it didn't confuse the process by having some at a second read, or many at a second read, and a few at a first read. So we'll be bringing those back. I know we do have work to do on those, and our goal is to have a completed manual so that MASC is sending us just those updates for revision, which should make the process much easier.
Well, the other thing is, anything we passed in this is fine. If there are some on holds, and we already had an existing policy, then it's important for people to realize that policy is still in effect until we change it. So it's not like, and there were some things that we just didn't have. So I think we've done well to get this, and we'll work on the rest.
Would it be, just for a timeline, is it appropriate to say, Dr. Martis, that by June, or do you think it'll be more likely this summer? What do you think is
I would say right now by June, certainly the budget is, consuming us right now, but certainly by June, and if we have to move a few into the summer, I'd be very comfortable talking about specifically why.
Perfect.
So I think that I'd like to have this as completed as we possibly can, so we have some.
And that's really great timing when you think about it, because it'll coincide nicely with, we'll be finishing up our assessment of goals for this year.
Right.
Yours as well, Dr. Martin, but particularly my point is ours, and that'll be a good way to kick off perhaps our conversation for what are those issues that we as a group want to be discussing and put on the agenda for our goals for the following year. So I think that is very timely. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, other matters, Chris, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, and I'll just, I have the capital improvement plan information that I want to give to you tonight. But before I do that, I just want to quickly segue something that Larry and I have talked about and Kate just brought up and made me think about, and that is our whole process of strategic plan, district improvement plan, our school improvement plans. Debbie and I have been talking a lot about it. And we'll be spending time over the next few meetings discussing this in more detail, taking each one, taking a look at them, figuring out where we've been, what we're doing, whether we need to modify them. I mean, there's certainly, I call it in-course corrections that we make as we move along, figuring out. But I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that this district and this community went through a comprehensive strategic planning process, and that moved into the district improvement plan, and then the school improvement plan, and then obviously the goals that we set, that I set as a superintendent, and that the school committee set as a school committee. So it's really, we have a lot of those things moving at the same time, and it's a matter of pulling them together and articulating them. I don't want the public to feel that we've just put those things on the shelf and said, okay, we finished that process, because those are really working documents that we need to continue to refine. And as you just articulated, we do have a time frame, a loose one right now, but a time frame that could work well into moving this to the next level through the next school year. So I wanted to mention that. It was a little more timely because of the segue, but I also want to share with you the capital improvement plan that Paul has sent a note to us. And I had mentioned, and I think...
Here's another one.
Oh.
Here's another
Go
one.
ahead. One, that's one. And I'm going through this process for the first time here. I'm pleased that we've been able to, at least before town meeting approval, and obviously you know and the public should know that this takes town meeting approval, but we've had a number of items on the plan, and Paul has articulated that we met on Saturday, March 1st, as committee to discuss the requests and the ones that, as we've been working through this process over the last few months, the computers and software upgrades, the school buses and the copiers, we've been calling recurring events, because we know we need to have this in a capital budget each year in order to make sure that we're continuing to improve in these areas. The feasibility study of Foxborough High School is an important one. As you can see, the difference in the $250,000 number and the $230,100 was really trying to get to the end and figure out the $250,000 number was an outside cost, that when Larry and Paul and Andy Galler and Randy Scollins and I attended the meeting with the school, with the Mass School Building Assistants advisors to us. So I felt that we could bring that down just a little bit. A couple of important areas that we've been talking about is the floor tile removal at the Taylor School. And they also approved the locker renovation. We had a presentation from Craig Najarian, our athletic director, locker room renovation at the Igo School. All three, they funded all three together, which gives us the best price rather than piecing it out over 2 or 3 years. But in that particular area, and also some in terms of our copiers, we agreed, pending approval by the school committee, to, as we've been reminded, and I need to also say this, on the town side, there's been use of their revolving funds, the ambulance receipt funds and others fund capital projects as well. So it's not just the school department that would be funding some of our capital through revolving fund, but the town also does that as well. So the two areas that we had on our agenda that we're going to have to wait for another year are paving and curbing here at Foxborough High School, tennis courts and fencing here at the high school. But I think we put a very good plan and a very aggressive plan together, and I'm pleased to offer this. I apologize for not having this in your hand earlier. I'll use Paul's vacation as an excuse because he's the one who always reminds me about these things. And I didn't get a chance to put this, so I'm not asking for a vote tonight because I don't like to do that. Put something in front of you 5 minutes beforehand.
Well, let me just ask the committee, though, if the committee is comfortable voting to provide $100,000 of funding from the building rental account to cover the locker room renovations, and whether or not they're willing to fund the $22,440 towards copiers out of one of the revolving accounts as well. Or do you need time to think about it?
I would like to know what the balance will be in the school
Okay.
building account for
Paul has that.
for the locker renovation as well as the other ones.
Okay, Mr. Jackson?
We had done a projection on the revolving accounts that would take us out to July 1st, '09. That was based on anticipated income in the accounts as well as anticipated offsets or expenses that would come out of the accounts. So, and that also, the numbers I'm about to read also have taken into consideration the $250,000 shortfall on the special ed side for transportation tuition. So I've built that into the numbers. So projected balance as of July 1st, '09 for athletic revolving, and I'm rounding numbers off, $6,000. The transportation off-duty account, $38,000. Building rental, $184,000. Tuition revolving, $48,000. Circuit breaker, $108,000. Extended day, $165,000. Adult ed, $35,000. And summer school, $33,000. That adds to $617,000. So that if you take $100,000 off that number, we'd still have $517,000 projected as balances in the revolving accounts.
In all the revolving accounts, but that's a significant decrease from the amounts that we've had.
Well, because of the $250,000 to cover the special education reduces the account by almost 25%. We were carrying, in the prior years, $1 million.
Right.
We've used some of that for capital projects like the high school gym and some of those, and then this $250,000 will come out of the revolving account to cover the shortfall. Now, that's assuming that we don't have additional savings in the last few months of the year on heat, electricity, other things which would offset that. But I think Paul's giving you probably a worst case.
Right.
Okay.
And the idea would be to fund, the locker renovation is something that those that have been down to the school and have seen it, it's abominable. And the only way that the town can afford to do that now would be to do it out of a revolving account. And the key thing for that is the MSBA feasibility study takes a big chunk of the capital, and of course we need to do that. So the discussion was, we know you need computers, we know you need buses. There were questions about, could you get by with fewer computers? Could you get by with fewer copiers? That kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, the feeling was that we thought maybe we could get the committee to agree to fund $100,000 out of revolving.
Are we getting back any part of the feasibility from the state?
That's already,
Sorry,
that's
so
already
we
figured
didn't-
in.
okay, all right, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think Randy Scollins is right on with this at this point in time because we don't have another number. but we're looking right now at the baseline number is 48.6%. And as you do the incentive piece to go up, it'll be more, it should be more than that. So that's why I was comfortable with changing that to 230,000, because there's a little bit of an offset there as well. So, but that's already built into the projection.
So this is our share, okay.
And in fact, in April, we will have Chris, Wendy will have an agenda item where in April, Chris will update the committee on where do we stand with the state. We had our meeting, there were paperwork to go back, and where does it stand, and how do we keep pushing it forward in a positive way? And that, what's the process for selecting this consultant that would do this review for the 230,000, and just walk everybody through that, and we'll do that from April. All right, Wendy, if you'll just make a note of that.
Larry?
Yes,
just to clarify, because you would like us to vote on this.
If you're comfortable tonight.
Yeah,
If
and
you're
I
not,
can
we
say, but
wait.
my question is, I also was waiting, but to follow up Katie, we're not saying which account it's necessarily going to come out of. We're just saying that this will come out of a school revolving account.
Right.
For instance, it can't come out of the athletic because
There's only $6,000.
there's only $6,000.
Right. That's
So
correct.
we're in agreement roughly of the $500,000. But even of that number, will we need part? I guess my question is, are we still going to need part of that? There's still an unknown between special education, and we don't know all the other accounts yet. So is it possible for the vote to, if you need to move forward so that things can be ordered, we're going to move forward and take a vote, but it's also contingent on making sure that, because...
See, it's
When
contingent,
will we know?
town meeting has to approve the capital.
Right.
Yeah.
So at town meeting, we have to be able to tell the voters where the source of revenue is coming. So we have to give the municipal side our approval that we will provide the $100,000 of funding from a revolving account. Just like when they talk about this, they'll say, here's how much is coming out of the ambulance revolving account, here's how much we're expecting from the state in reimbursement on the study, here's how much, and here's how much is coming out of free cash. So in order for town meeting to approve it, and in order for it to go to the printer, we really need to make a decision fairly quickly whether we're going to support it or not, because if we're not going to support it, then that will change what they present to town meeting probably.
Another question. I absolutely support this, but we're, between municipal and the school side, we still have another 220,000 hanging out
For
there.
fiscal '09.
For fiscal '09.
Not-
So
right.
how do we, is there a possibility that in closing that, we might defer on a capital item?
I don't think once you've passed it, you can,
Well,
because this,
to address Kate's question in particular, what the town has suggested, and I agree, is that we shouldn't use revolving accounts for ongoing expenses. It should be really for more the one-time kind of thing. So using it for the renovation is a one-time kind of renovation. We're hoping that this issue with the special education is a one-time, and we've built into the fiscal '09 budget what we think that's going to be as well. Now, again, if in fact, what I've said to the selectmen, if over the summer 9 new students move in, then we're going to have to sit down as a committee, and in September, we're going to have to be talking, where do we find extra money to cover that?
well, the other thing too is when you have horrendous unexpected expenses, you do have the option of going back to the town. They might not like it, Kate, but unfortunately, we built a budget based on need. And if it's based on need and we run into these, I always use the example, if every freezer went in the school, you'd have to go back as an unexpected expense. So those are things that you haven't built into your budget. So we're passing and asking town meeting to pass a budget based on our needs. But unexpected expenses, it could be the same thing on the town side. If they lost every fire engine, it's an unexpected expense. You got to come up with it somehow. So I don't think you can just, you have to deal with what you have to deal with, and we've presented a budget based on what we need for the students for next year.
That's why this discussion is good for us.
I think
Because
it's
gonna-
critical.
If we don't discuss this here and now, it's going to come back on.
You know, and the town side has to understand that, the public has to understand that we're doing this based on what we need to run the system.
And I will tell you that some of the discussion, some of the questions came up, for instance, do we have to do all the floor tile? And we said, well, this is the last school that's left. They've waited all
We
this
have to.
time.
We have
do
to.
that.
It's
And
a
they said,
It's a
well,
mess.
could you
It's
just
a
do
mess.
part of it? And I said, no, I
No.
believed the committee wanted that done. It was only fair for the parents of that school. So when they kind of were going through it, and they said, okay, if we start from the top, you need the computers, you can't get by with less computers. We said, no, we're trying to keep our computers within a 5-year life cycle. The school buses, well, we know we need that. We know we need the copiers. We know we need the study. If we're not willing to give up on the floor tile, and we kind of worked our way down, and that's where they were running out of money. And so the question then became, if you really want the locker renovation, would you be willing to, as a school committee, take that out of a revolving account? Because that's where the line was going to be drawn. And my suggestion is that I think that's important enough that I was willing to come back to this committee and make the argument to fund it. And the only way to fund it was to either not fund something above it or to provide the money out of a revolving account. And that's why, if we're not going to do that, I think it's important to get back to the town very quickly.
Larry, I just wanted to make a point. I'm in support of what we're discussing here, but I think, again, making note of the fact that we had $1 million in these revolving accounts, and now it is dwindling. And I think that we need, we've been going to the revolving accounts for a lot of one-time expenditures.
Right.
And now as that account is getting less and less, we need to be mindful of that as other one-time expenses are going to come up, because they will in the future.
Right.
And you talk about, the 2010 budget going to be a difficult one. So I think that's why I'm posing the questions. But one other thing that we've talked about in the past, and I don't think we're ready with the information at this time, but is looking at our use of computers.
Right.
And I'm hoping that for the next budget cycle, that we will have more data to support or not support whether we need to continue to spend this kind of money on computers.
Right.
Again, that may be an area that will have some
there's actually a
ability
tool
to move.
that the IT folks are working on to look at usage by machine, so we can determine whether or not there are machines that are being used,
Right.
the machines that are not being used, so that we can refine it. But I believe at this particular point, Paul, these are all going to which school?
These will be the first round of replacements for the Ahern School since it was renovated.
Right, and it was renovated what year?
01, I believe.
01. So this is replacing their 2001 computers. So their computers are going to be 7 years old by the time that they're replaced with these. So,
And this won't do the whole school. The whole school has close to 600 computers, so that this will just replace the first. You're going to key in on instructor machines and computer labs.
Right.
These 250, and then the next slug, assuming that we do it, because we have a little bit of a different model with the Ahern. The Ahern model is a mix between the high school model and the elementary. The elementary level, we have a teacher, computer, and then machines in a classroom, in a very small lab. At the middle school, we have classroom computers, the teacher's computer, and then a bunch of labs. At the high school, we really have teacher computers and then labs. We don't have individual classroom computers. So one of the things that this tool will help us identify is how much are we really utilizing classroom computers versus the lab, and are we better off not replacing classroom computers and maybe increasing the number of labs that we have, similar to the model that we have at the high school.
Could we do that, though, if the study comes through this summer and they decide they want to, you can't switch this money from the CIP other than computers. But if our configuration is currently the Ahern, if you say, Katie, we do a utilization or some information and we decide we want to change the configuration, we can still do that, even though
We can work it within the system.
right.
Yeah, because this 250 is the first phase of whatever we decide to do. And we may not ramp up to 600 to replace everyone,
Right.
but this would start that replacement process that we need.
It gives us the
flexibility
funding.
to say, you know what,
Flexibility,
we know we need to improve stay the commitment to our life cycle of, 6 years. It will be the 250 used for this, but instead of going into Ahern, we're going to place them elsewhere. So we still have.
The
that
strategy
flexibility.
is being finalized, but we need to have the funding in order to execute.
That this is where we have to have this discussion. I just have one last question, if I may. We've struggled for 5 years on the paving and curbing at the high school and the tennis courts. And, Mike O'Leary has just done an outstanding job, literally patching, and I think he's used everything. They're approaching almost unsafe. I hate to use that word, but Mike gets out there and he does it. But there are some concerns, and one of the reasons we've been able to say, okay, it's going to be, 2008, then it slipped to 2009. And like you say, we got, 2010 coming up, it's going to be tough. My question is, under the renovation, now, we're still moving along. It's not an unexpected expense, but because of the way the funding is, there's going to continue to be deterioration in that tennis court. Might that be opened up? Are we open to having that come under, for instance, when we have the project management phase?
Well, it's like the football field. Remember we did that with the renovation and expansion?
I think when we do the, obviously we have very good data from the McGuire report and other
What needs to be done?
information, but we haven't finished our, to Larry's point, when we come back in April with an update, we haven't finished our discussion with what else can be under this whole umbrella. And that can also be part of the feasibility study. So that when they look at that, if they can say, well, so it may be that leaving this off for this year may allow us to, and I'm just saying may.
Could help
I'll
us.
say may again.
That's what I'm
It
asking.
may allow us to have the reimbursement piece in that. And given other projects in the old system that I've been involved in, that's not unusual. That's not unusual. So you can look at facilities around the building and as well. So
Particularly
Paul
when
and
we
I
can
talked
document
about
there's continued deterioration, and we've taken the steps along the way. I mean, we voted to use money from the revolving account to actually fix some of the staging area around there.
Right. So we do have some good data that we've been trying to pay attention to this, and you just get to a point where you just don't have enough money to do everything that you'd want to do. So
It'll be part of the negotiations, to answer your question partly. You got to get them to the dance first, then you got to get them to start dancing with you. We're pretty close to starting the dance, and once we start the dance, we can then figure out how long we're going to dance. So I think that we have that opportunity. We want to bring them out. We want to walk through it. We're hoping this is they want us to be a model community for extending the life of a building another 40 years. Our view is it's extending the life of the building and the surrounding parts of the building, and to take the tennis courts and some of the other things. We're hoping we can get that in, but we're not sure. And that's kind of why, Kate, it fell towards the bottom, because if we can get 50 cents on the dollar,
I understand the
it's worth
strategy.
waiting.
I agree wholeheartedly. I just want to reconfirm to our understanding and the public that that's still our view.
Yep.
So that's great.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve $100,000 transfer? We have a motion from Kate and a second by Beverly. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Paul, would you let Randy know tomorrow that we did approve that on the capital?
Yes, sir.
Chris, do you have anything else on the other business? Okay. Martha?
Nothing.
Beverly?
Yes. I would like to once again extend personal thanks from my son Bill. If you didn't catch him on the Common or the cliff on Fox 25 News the other night, he stood and said publicly how much it meant to him to have the support of his community behind him while he was overseas and leading patrols in the streets of Baghdad. And of course, fond memories of him were the homemade cookies from the bank drive, the TD Bank North Drive, which included several of our young men across who were overseas. And then, little Jack Foley, young Jack Foley, who's now a fifth grader, collected all the cans of silly string to help protect when they were patrolling. And Taylor School was Bill's elementary school, and he has received several Christmas cards and Valentines and designs from all of the elementary school children. So many, many thanks. And I want to once again be able to report a very successful Spanish exchange to Valencia and Chirivella, Spain. And our counterparts, our Spanish colleagues, and will be here again in September, I believe, and looking very much forward to come. Once again, another successful French exchange. There is one sophomore who had such fun, she started earning money to go back in her junior year already. So, wonderful to have successful programs.
And Beverly, you look 10 years younger now that your son's back.
I feel.
Congratulations.
Kate?
Two items. try to be very brief. I'd just like to thank Dr. Martis. You attended a staff meeting, a department head meeting on the municipal side, and I'd like to thank you for continuing the tradition that was set up several years ago of working very closely with the municipal side. You met with our senior citizen center, and on behalf of them, I heard wonderful stories throughout the community, and I'd just like to thank you for having done that. And there are a couple of people in your staff that also need kudos. Mr. Paul Jackson, our IT team, Mr. Paul Bertolotti. On the municipal side, you had Mike Mackey, Randy Scollins, and basically what it was is that our seniors could not have afforded the computer software. In order, they have a computer lab that they've set up at the senior citizen, and they've had a lot of interest. Well, they needed help building the lab. Mike O'Leary went over there. We got it done for the senior center. And then the glitch was they had it up, but they didn't have the software. And no problem, Dr. Martis, you offered your staff, and it was just a wonderful teamwork, because what happened is that they were able to use our license and our buying power to get, instead of paying like $150 or whatever it was per each license, they were able to come off of ours, and they got it for, what it was, half the price. The seniors were just absolutely thrilled, and it was seamless. It was seamless with the municipal side and all the people working with the school side, and I just wanted to say thank you for continuing that tradition. The other item, if I may, I'd just like to give a very quick update on the Partnership for a Drug-Free Foxborough. The group actually met March 14th, and as you all know, we pretty much did what we said we would do with the parent forum, the educational forum. That was last November. But the group wanted to meet and decide what we could do to keep the focus and what was realistic to accomplish for this half of the year. And we've mentioned the idea of students doing public service announcements. And I just want to make sure that the board is still, we've mentioned this before, I just want to make sure you're comfortable. Foxborough Cable Access has stepped forward. Mike Weber has said he would be happy to film either in the studio or come up here to the high school. We wanted to get our own little oral, if you will, archive, oral history of our students talking about why not, talking about not getting involved with alcohol or drugs. And before the next group of seniors escapes, we'd like to have the opportunity between April and June to be running some to have the opportunity to film some public service announcements made up of our students. They would also show on Foxborough Cable Access, so it gets out there to the community. And then we'd have this information. And Mike Weber said he would work with us to do that. And I just want to make sure that the group is comfortable with that. Kevin Murphy is, as always, working with us. Chief is working with us. We will do a little 5-minute presentation at the prom signing contract. I believe that was May 3rd, but it got changed to the end of April, and I don't have the date in front of me. So, again, the Partnership for Drug-Free Foxborough, you can click onto the school website and link under Parents to get to the Partnership's website, or you can just go right to partnershipfordrugfreefoxborough.ning.com. So if you have any suggestions of what else you'd like to see done or anything else, don't hesitate to log on. It's a networking website. The last thing, just Kevin Murphy has committed that we would work across groups. So we'd like to get people from music, we'd like to get people from the peer leader, people from student government, capture, and not just the seniors, but capture kind of a number of students. And we would, do the filming, and then we could edit and capture the best, and then we would have that for future programs. We can also, Foxborough Cable Access, we're going to pull the clips from Jen Krupski and Jen, I think it was who gave wonderful soundbite clips about what parents need to know. And Coach Martinelli spoke, as well as Kevin Murphy and the DA and the panel discussion. So they would even work on pulling some clips that we, again, could start building our archives, if you will, around this. And I think that might be a great thing for us to be able to accomplish this spring.
I have a question for you, Kate. It sounds great. Are there going to be specific questions that are going to be asked of the students, or is it going to be their own, thoughts about being drug-free?
I think it'll be a combination. I think they'll.
Or is that in the works of trying to figure out the content of the
For instance,
public announcements?
It's all a question of what will come down to edit, and we can showcase it here. Some students may need, in order to feel comfortable, to be prompted or given a cue. So then, in answer to your question, yes, they would be. Other students we know can go right in there with a magnificent soundbite, as we saw the students who volunteered in that panel discussion that we had, not this past year, but our first kickoff session. Another editing issue is that Chief Mike Weber suggested, it's been, and I think this group has talked about it, a number of years since they did the mock crash at the high school, and I'm not suggesting that we do that because that's a little passé, but they have that all on film. He might like to take some clips of that where you actually hear the voices of the first responders on the scene to this crash and build that into a cue to prompt, input.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I just wanted to know, I'm not sure if it's still a requirement, but it used to be a requirement of the children taking the TV media production class here, that they had to do public service announcements as an assignment, PSA. So I'm wondering if that could be a resource. Maybe some of those kids would like to get credit for it.
I think that would be wonderful.
Because I think that course reaches a broad audience of students anyway. And I don't know if they still have it as a requirement, but I know that used to be part of that course.
See, one of the nice things about that is that to bring the students into the cable access site may limit us, but if we could have a camera, and if they've been trained by Foxborough Cable Access or part of this program, then they will actually, Foxborough Cable Access will allow our students who have been trained to use them. So they can actually film some impromptu ones here at the high school. So you get a repertoire of...
So it's just something to think about.
So if everyone's in agreement with that, Dr. Lawrence, perhaps you could help the group just to shepherd that through to correctly through the correct channels with administrators, and so we make no mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Katie?
No, I don't.
I just had two items. One is, since April is coming upon us very quickly, I'm going to be asking Wendy to assemble Chris's evaluation forms and be asking the committee to start giving some thought in April. I'll have Wendy pass out Chris's goals and objectives and the format that we've used for his evaluation. I'll ask you to start putting together the evaluation, your thoughts. As we remember, we talked about, it'll come to me and I'll put a composite together and we'll kind of come back and discuss that. I would also like Wendy to give us for April a list of the school committee goals and objectives, because I think it would be helpful for us, at least as we get to the April-May timeframe, sit back and look at how much progress we've made, how much progress we haven't made, what else we need to do, so that as a new chair were to take over in May, the new chair can help set an agenda for the upcoming year based on the goals and objectives that we still haven't met or that we've met partially. So I think that as we get into April, it's a good time to start thinking about both Chris's performance and our own performance. So if the committee's okay with that, I'll have Wendy send that out the first week of April. The second...
When's the due date on that, Larry? When do you need to have it back?
I don't have the policy in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly the date.
You want it before the election?
But I think it'd be nice if we could do it before the election. But even if we can't, if we can do it by early May, since Beverly's running unopposed.
I was just going to say, we haven't
I don't think it makes that big of a difference. But I would like to get, as the new chair will take over, that we kind of wrap that stuff up, and I'd like to try to do that in the April, early May timeframe, so the new chair doesn't have to deal with that piece. They'll deal with it the following year.
Well, I'm not home free. I do want you to remember that about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a write-in who beat the incumbent in a nearby.
Not here.
It was in Norton, or it was very near mine. Don't you remember that?
There was one in Mansfield as well.
Yes,
I think
don't you
I've heard of no.
So I don't feel like this is not.
How nervous you should be.
I know. Well, you know, my son's home from Baghdad, so you know this is.
You're right, because there was a 5-person race in Mansfield.
There was.
My
Then the
name was
written
written
will
as
be
the number 1, and I wasn't on the ballot.
Absolutely, and there was no.
It does
So
happen.
it does happen. So I'm not taking anything for granted.
But I think we'll try to wrap that up very quickly.
That's a good idea, Larry.
All right? So what I'd like to do is that Wendy would have that out to everybody by April 1st.
Okay.
I'd like to have everybody's comments back to me by April 15th. That gives you 2 weeks. And then I'll put it together and I'll send it back out as a consensus to everybody.
This would be my final, each of us will be doing an evaluation.
That's correct.
My only problem with that is that I think out of common courtesy, and the way I've always done it is, I would sit down with Dr. Martis and go through that. Are we not going to do that as individuals?
Yes.
And just
You can.
When
you
it's
can-
all over, you do.
So
you can
2
do it.
weeks may not be, I mean, if your deadline is before May 1st, then within 2 weeks, I don't know that because of school vacation in April, that you would be able to, that we would be able to do that. So if we could just be mindful of that.
I think, as always, we'll be flexible, but let's try to set a goal that says that you would do the evaluation, have your individual conversation with them if you'd like, and then have it to me and saying, here's my evaluation for the composite. And then what we would do is, I think what we said is we would put the composite together and we would release that to the public. We'd have a discussion in a public session, et cetera.
Okay, so the composite you would want by when?
I'm writing the composite, so I need your input by
Right.
April 15th. Now, if we get to April 12th and people need an extra couple of days, then we'll take the extra couple of days, we'll get it done. We want the process to work right. It's a very different process than we've used in the past, so
That's
if it
why
takes
we-
a little bit longer to get it right, we'll just do it right.
Okay.
The last item, I wanted some counsel from this committee. As Mr. Nevado mentioned this evening, he sent me a note on a letter on March 5th, which I responded to on March 7th. As you know, our policy requires us to respond to all correspondence. And in that letter, I said to him, although he says in his letter tonight that your letter of March 7th is an attempt to have it both ways. On the one hand, you stated you do not intend to respond to the issues we raised. Well, what I actually said is that while you made some positive comments in your letter, I do not intend to respond point by point to your many negative comments. I believe that as reasonable people who at times may disagree, we should move on and continue to represent the Foxborough schools in a positive and respectful manner. I don't think it's fruitful to continue to respond to letter after letter of this negativism, and so if the committee does not disagree, I believe my letter of March 7th responded to his letter of March 5th, and his letter of March 24th is not much different than his letter of March 5th, and so I don't intend to respond unless the committee thinks I need to respond.
I'm comfortable with the letter that you sent.
Okay.
I am as well.
All right, Kate? Beverly? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate that guidance. Now we have scheduled an executive session for the discussion of collective bargaining strategies, not to come out into public session. I would like a motion to go into executive session by Martha. We have a second by Beverly. I'll take a roll call vote. Kate?
Yes, aye.
Beverly?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting is adjourned.